You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to a special Memorial Day edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and before we get rolling, I just want to extend my heartfelt thoughts and prayers to all the service members and the families of service members who died to protect this country. Your sacrifices will never be forgotten. You are American heroes. Every single person in uniform and their families are American heroes. You see the commercials for, I think it's an insurance company that caters to members of the armed forces. The spouses serve too is the point that they drive home. Couldn't be more right. Those are single mothers that have to raise their kids knowing that there's a strong chance that their father may never make it home. The burden that we place on these people is immeasurable, and quite frankly, we shouldn't even need a day to remember these people. We shouldn't even need a Veterans Day. We should do it every day. Honor the fallen soldiers and honor the current soldiers. To every member of the armed forces, both current and former, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your service. Okay. I want to hit on a few Jets points. I didn't go crazy in depth on Flacco because the podcast was running late. Had a bunch of things that popped up that day. My father needed help with something. One of my friends called me, and this guy can talk your ear off. So the podcast went up kind of late. I touched on Flacco. I didn't go crazy in depth on him. Let me go more in-depth now. First, I said that the contract was for $4.5 million. That's technically correct, but that's counting performance bonuses. Joe Flacco is guaranteed $1.5 million. The other $3 million he can make through incentives. So it just makes the signing from a monetary standpoint that much better. This guy is a former Super Bowl MVP. This guy knows what it takes to win. This guy instantly becomes one of the best backups in the NFL. And for a quarterback who has never started a full season in Darnold, the Jets need that. The past 2 seasons, whenever Darnold's been out, you had the sense that the season was over. Josh McCown wasn't a world beater anymore. Trevor Siemian, they tried for a half and then he got hurt. And even in the half he played, he was absolutely terrible. That was some of the worst game calling I've ever seen. Gase deserves a ton of criticism for that. And Luke Falk was a good try, but he's not an NFL quarterback. I don't think anyone was really comfortable with David Fales as the backup, but there's not much you can do in the middle of the season when you're on your fourth quarterback. And Mike White was on the practice squad. I'd be surprised if you ever saw Mike White throw a pass in the NFL. I remember liking him out of Western Kentucky. I thought there was something there that could maybe be built upon, but that didn't work out. The Jets needed an experienced backup. A backup who could come in and play well enough to win games. That is Joe Flacco. Is Joe Flacco ever going to win Super Bowl MVP again? Or ever be that type of player again? The answer is no. But can Joe Flacco come in, start a few games, hold his own, and help Darnold develop? The answer is yes. It was a fantastic signing by the Jets. I had texted a friend of mine, who I haven't spoken to in a couple months, that the Jets signed a backup. I'm really happy about it. We both agreed that they needed a backup quarterback before the offseason started. You know, I don't know if he feels this way, but I truly believe that backup quarterback is the most underrated position in all of sports. How many times have you seen a season go off the rails because the backup quarterback is forced into action and you can see he's not ready? If you don't invest in the backup quarterback, you're playing with fire. Even if it's a guy like Eli Manning who never got hurt or always played through it. The Giants rolled with Geno Smith. We all know how that turned out. Dak Prescott, his backup was Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush is not that good. Russell Wilson's backup was Trayvon Boykin. Trayvon Boykin wasn't that good. You're playing with fire if you don't have a good backup quarterback. But the reason I'm bringing that conversation up is because this guy texted me, very happy with the signing, good cheap deal, agree with that 100%. It just makes the 4th round QB pick look even stupider. Obviously, he's talking about James Morgan. I didn't text him back because I like to save this stuff for the podcast. I mean, that was my rule on Beyond the Game. I didn't talk sports before the show. I wanted to save everything for the show so that way I could get visceral reactions from people. And maybe I could have texted him back, but I didn't. And truth be told, he was really the first person who put that thought in my brain. Does this make the James Morgan pick look stupid? And the answer is no, it doesn't. Does it mean that we're not going to see James Morgan play this year? Yeah. He's going to be the 3rd string quarterback. And he's going to take up a roster spot. He's going to be inactive on game days. Yeah, we're never going to see him. So from that standpoint, I understand that the pick doesn't look that good. But this is a guy who can develop into a solid player in this league. I don't think anyone's expecting James Morgan to be a Pro Bowler. But this is a guy who a lot of people in the scouting community liked. ESPN had him as the 171st best prospect in this draft. Mel Kiper really liked him. Lance Zierlein of NFL.com had a 4th round grade on him. This is a guy who can develop into a solid player. But everyone was in agreement that he can't start right away. James Morgan, a week ago probably was the backup. It wasn't Fales. I think James Morgan's a better quarterback than David Fales. So let's say Darnold gets hurt, Morgan is forced into game action. He's not going to do that well. By bringing in Flacco, you're taking that pressure off him. In addition to mentoring Darnold, Flacco will also mentor Morgan. Keep in mind, they're all sharing a quarterback room. Joe Flacco is a much better quarterbacks coach than Dowell Loggins. I don't think there's anything wrong with having Morgan as the potential long-term backup. Now, I know exactly what the response is going to be to that. There's a better use of resources than spending a fourth-round pick on a long-term backup. I understand that. But the Jets did a really good job of filling their holes in this draft. This wasn't Mike Maccagnan, best player available. No, Douglas drafted for need, and it paid off. There really wasn't a need that Douglas didn't address. NFL.com had their 5 needs as wide receiver, linebacker, O-line, cornerback, and running back. Wide receiver, Denzel Mims. Linebacker, Jabari Zuniga. Offensive line, Mekhi Becton and Cameron Clark. Cornerback, Bryce Hall. Running back, LaMichael Pirine. So the Jets did a great job of filling their holes, even with spending a fourth-round pick on a luxury pick. Picking a quarterback to be your long-term backup is a luxury pick. And maybe if you wanted to slide around the order, that would make it a little more appealing, but the Jets got some really good players after they took Morgan. Cameron Clark has the potential to develop into a solid starter on the O-line. Just look at what he did against Clemson. Bryce Hall was one of the steals of the draft. Braden Mann, I think, can be a solid punter. I don't mind the Morgan pick still. It hurts that you're not going to get to see him play. It's another Bryce Petty or Christian Hackenberg situation. That we don't know what we have in this guy. But I think if brought along slowly, James Morgan can be a really good backup to Sam Darnold for a long time. The final point that I want to hit on with the Jets is Jamal Adams. And look, I said I wasn't going to go more in depth on this, but a lot of people asked me to. There have been a lot of updates over the weekend. He's still a Jet as of right now, but obviously we've got a little less than 4 months before the season starts. Anything can happen. Instead of talking about the reports, because odds are, if Jamal Adams is traded, he's going to go to the Cowboys. That's something that we've seen a million times. I don't want to rehash that. I want to hit this from a different angle. Is it better to just rip the Band-Aid off, one way or another? Because the issue isn't the Jets paying Jamal Adams. That's my issue. But that's not Joe Douglas's issue. Douglas's issue is he wants to wait for Adams to sign a long-term extension. Adams wants his money right now. I understand that. But having said that, he signed a contract. He is signed to the Jets for 5 years starting from when he's drafted, 2017. So, next year is his 5th-year option. Adams wants that ripped up and the Jets to give him more money. The Jets don't. They want him to honor his contract that every other player agreed to. I understand the Jets' position. I think it's a very reasonable position to say to a player, you signed this contract, this is what every rookie got, you need to abide by it, and we'll pay you in 2022 if you keep your high play up. Adams wants his money now. Again, I understand where he's coming from. Let's say he gets signed to a massive extension tomorrow, and then week 1, he's out for the year. He still has his money. I understand where he's coming from. But I think it's a very reasonable position that the Jets are taking here. You signed a contract. We expect you to honor it. It's very difficult to sympathize with players when they hold out. In any other profession, if you signed a contract, you can't say to your employer, I don't think the terms are fair anymore. We have to renegotiate. It doesn't work like that. The NFL is different in that respect, and I understand it. I remember the Darrelle Revis drama vividly. And the Jets gave in. They gave him a massive extension. And then they ended up trading him to Tampa Bay anyway. I get that. I understand that the precedent has been set by the Jets and other teams. But this is a new regime. This is Joe Douglas's first full year as a GM. Either next month or the month after will be 12 months on the job. If he has a way that he wants to go about business, well, you have to fall in line. He's the boss. He's the GM. If he's not going to sign Adams early, Adams is either going to accept that or he'll hold out. And in this coronavirus climate, where there are more unemployment claims than we've had in a long time, it's going to be very difficult for him to garner sympathy. Adams signed a contract. The Jets want him to play. They're willing to pay him. He just has to wait. I don't see anything wrong with that. Speaking of the coronavirus, it seems like we've reached its apex, and now leagues are really ramping up discussions on coming back. Thank God, I've ran out of old movies to watch. My sock drawer has been reorganized a million times. So, I want to talk about the NHL. And that 24-team playoff format is going to be officially considered by the NHLPA. Under this format, the top 4 seeds in each conference would get a bye, and then the other 16 teams would play a best of 5 to narrow the field down to 16. Now, we don't know if this is going to be a bracket-style system where you're locked in to certain tiers, or if there's going to be a reseeding after the quote-unquote play-in round. That's something that's still being negotiated. What's also being negotiated is how those 8 teams that are going to get byes are going to play. And what I mean by that is those 8 teams are going to need to get back in shape. It's not going to be enough to just have another training camp. If teams like the Islanders and Rangers are playing meaningful games and these teams aren't playing at all, that puts the Islanders and Rangers at an advantage. There have been talks of those 8 teams playing against each other in either exhibition games or games to determine seeding. It's a really, really interesting proposal with a lot of layers. There's a lot to break down here. Firstly, I love the fact that the NHL is going straight into the playoffs. The expanded field, I understand the logic. This isn't like the NBA where we knew the 16 teams that were going to be in the playoffs. We didn't know what 16 teams were going to be in the NHL playoffs. The Islanders were 1 point behind the Blue Jackets and Hurricanes for a wildcard spot. The Rangers were 2 points out. The Panthers were 3 points out. In the Western Conference, the Predators and Canucks were tied for that second wildcard spot. The Wild were 1 point behind them. The Coyotes were 4 points behind them. The NHL did need to come up with a system to let all the bubble teams participate. There was no question about that. There was talks of going with the same format but doing it under points percentage. So the Islanders would have gotten in because they got 80 points in 68 games. That's a better points percentage than 81 points in 70 games for the Blue Jackets. The big thing that people were saying about the Islanders and their playoff hopes were they were tied for the least amount of games played with the Hurricanes. They both played 68 games. The Blue Jackets had played 70. So the Islanders had 2 opportunities to make up a point. It's very conceivable that they could have. But then the Blue Jackets fans would have cried foul. Wait a minute, we've never used points percentage before. That's a made-up thing. Our team is getting screwed over here. And they have a point. That points percentage has never really been used before, although you can make the argument that it has. We just never talked about it. It's really dicey. I really understand where Blue Jackets fans are coming from. And I'm not sure how I would have felt about the Islanders making the playoffs that way. I'd rather they earn it than on some crazy tiebreaker thing. But this 24-team tournament makes perfect sense. You're letting the bubble teams in. They're earning their right to get into the playoffs. The first round, the best-of-5 round, is essentially a way to flesh out the bubble teams. I gotta say, I think that's pretty smart. And I think they're gonna do a normal playoff format after that. So we're gonna have best-of-7 series for the quarterfinals, semifinals, conference finals, and Stanley Cup finals. We will have hockey in August. I don't like that. But if it can be done technically, I understand it. You're just not giving these players a lot of time to recover. I think you're going to push back next season to start maybe in November, which means you're impacting 2 seasons. I don't like that. I like the idea of just shortening the playoffs to best of 5 all throughout. Or even best of 3 all throughout. The bracketing system or a reseeding is kind of interesting. I don't mind either one. I can't say I do. You know, I understand it from a March Madness perspective of we don't have reseedings. You're locked into your spot regardless of what happens in the first round. But I understand it from the other perspective that it sort of makes things a little fairer. I'm more on the side of a reseeding. I'm just not sure how the bracket would look with 8 buys. And then you throw in these teams that were on the bubble that are going to play their way in. How does that work for the teams that got buys? I mean, there's talk about those 8 teams that are getting buys to play games that will determine their seeding. I don't like that. I say just call it right here. Call the seedings right here. Go by points, not points percentage. Alright, I'm with you that points percentage isn't a great metric. We've never used it before. I don't really like it. So let's say the Bruins, the best team in the NHL, would be locked in to play the Penguins, the 5th best team in the Eastern Conference. That's not really fair. Wouldn't you rather they play the Canadiens if they advance? I mean, it's clear the Bruins are the best team. They don't need to prove that anymore. They proved it through 70 games. I think you add in more variables than you need to if you use a bracketed system. I say go with a reseeding. It makes things more fair. If the Islanders are the only underdog that advances through this play-in round, let them play the Bruins in the first round. I don't mind that. I really, really don't mind that. I think a reseeding is the way to go. And this idea that the games that the top 8 teams are going to play against each other will determine seeding. No. We don't need that. Have them play exhibition games. No checking, no defense, or very little defense. I don't mind that. Let them get back into proper game shape. Moving on now to the Seahawks signing Carlos Hyde. And I'll repeat what I said before, that I didn't think the Seahawks needed a backup running back. Chris Carson, DJ Dallas, and Travis Homer was fine by me. But if you want Dallas to start off as a third stringer and work his way up, not put as much pressure on him, it makes sense to bring in Hyde. Out of the 4 running backs that the Seahawks were linked to, Hyde, Devontae Freeman, Marshawn Lynch, and sort of kind of LaShawn McCoy, but not really. Hyde was by far and away the best one. I mean, Hyde was a 1,000-yard back last year. Freeman wasn't. Lynch isn't in game shape anymore. And LaShawn McCoy was inactive for the Super Bowl. Hyde had to be the pick. And the deal that he's getting, up to $4 million, that's more than fair. I like the deal, I'm just not crazy about the fit. I'd have rather seen DJ Dallas get those carries behind Carson as opposed to Hyde. But I can't kill this deal. I understand the logic behind it. I do want to talk about another very, very sad death in the world of basketball. Jerry Sloan on Friday and Eddie Sutton late Saturday night. Even though I said that Sutton shouldn't be in the Basketball Hall of Fame because he's already in the College Basketball Hall of Fame, I stand by that. I fully respect the legacy that he has. He is one of only 8 coaches with at least 800 wins with a men's Division I program. He is, without question, one of the best college basketball coaches in history. He started out his college career at a junior college. He founded the College of Southern Idaho's men's basketball team. Immediately, they dominated. They went 33-4 and made the AAU tournament. They never finished with less than 24 wins. For a team that didn't exist before Sutton got there, to finish with at least 24 wins in their first 3 years of existence is pretty darn good. Sutton then went to Creighton, his first D1 stop. And it took him a while to get going. They were always an team under him until 73-74, when they made March Madness on the backs of Gene Harmon and Doug Brookins. After that, Sutton went to Arkansas, a team that had really fallen on hard times. They used to be really good way back in the day, but by the time Sutton got there, they were inept. I mean, all you have to do is look at the records. Duddy Waller and Larry Van Eman were not good. In Sutton's first year, the Razorbacks went 17-9. They then went 19-9 and made March Madness in Sutton's third year there by going 26-2. They went 16-0 in the Southwest Conference. And they had a really good team with Marvin Delph, Ron Brewer, and Sidney Moncrief. Not too many people remember that. Sidney Moncrief went to Arkansas. But the Razorbacks were upset in the first round by Wake Forest 86-80. But after that, the Razorbacks under Sutton never missed a tournament. In 1978, Arkansas made the Final Four for the first time since 1945. They had a great team that year. Brewer was still there, Moncrief was still there, Delft was still there. The thing is, they were just so much more experienced. They were so much better. I mean, all you have to do is compare the two teams. You could see that the 78 team was better. They made it all the way to the Final Four, but lost a close game to Kentucky, 64-59. Jack Givens was insane in that game for Kentucky. Nearly had a double-double, 23 points and 9 rebounds. In 1985, Sutton decided to leave Arkansas for a more prestigious job at Kentucky. Sutton's stay at Kentucky was really, really tumultuous. He only lasted 4 seasons there. They had 2 bad teams and 2 great teams. Sutton's first team at Kentucky, 85-86, was a great team. They made it to the Elite Eight. Kenny Walker, Winston Bennett, and Ed Davender were insane. The year after that, they were terrible. Didn't do anything in March Madness. Got destroyed in the first round by OSU by 14 points. 87-88 was a great team, but they got upset in the Sweet 16 by Villanova, even though Kentucky had Rex Chapman, Davender was still there, Bennett was still there, and they added Rob Locke. After that, things really went south. Davender, Locke, and Bennett all graduated. Chapman went into the NBA to start a good career there. Eric Manuel, who was a really, really good college player, had to transfer to a school that I can't even pronounce. Hiawassee. Oh man, I apologize for that. He had to transfer because he was suspected of cheating on his entrance exam. LaRon Ellis was inexperienced. Chris Mills was inexperienced. That team was terrible. To add insult to injury, though, there was a major, major scandal that hit Kentucky. Dwayne Casey, the current coach of the Pistons, used to be an assistant coach at Kentucky. There was $1,000 in cash in an envelope that he supposedly sent to Chris Mills' father. Casey was uninvolved in that, but this led to an investigation. The NCAA dropped the hammer down on Kentucky. They nearly got hit with the death penalty. Sutton was forced to resign. The athletic director, Cliff Hagan, resigned. Manuel never played another game in the NCAA. Kentucky got hit with 3 years probation, a 2-year postseason ban, and a ban from live television in the 89-90 season. It seemed like Sutton's legacy would be forever tarnished. But then Oklahoma State came calling. Leonard Hamilton, in his 4 years there, didn't do what he would later do for the Florida schools. Miami, and FSU. Sutton inherited a team that went 17-14 in 89-90. In 90-91, he led them to a 24-8 record on the backs of Byron Houston, John Potter, and Sean Sutton. Eddie Sutton, but a really good college basketball player. And that team made it to the Sweet 16, but got upset by Temple. In 1995, Sutton accomplished something that very few college coaches have ever accomplished. He made the Final Four with two different teams. First Arkansas, then Oklahoma State. Big country, Bryant Reeves was insane. Randy Rutherford was a really underrated scorer. Andre Owens was a good distributor. And that team went on a great run, but got blown out by UCLA in the Final Four, 74-61, en route to the Bruins beating Sutton's old school, the University of Arkansas, in the finals. After that, Sutton had two more great teams. The team that he had at the turn of the century made it to the Elite Eight. That team had Desmond Mason, Brian Montanati, Glendon Alexander, Joe Atkins, Frederick Johnson, Doug Gottlieb was there. That was a really, really good team that should have been a lot better than it was. They just had some really easy matchups leading up to their Elite Eight matchup against Florida. And Florida was able to steamroll them 77-65. In 03-04, Sutton made the Final Four again. The last time he ever would, that team went 31-4. On the backs of Tony Allen, great scorer, great defender, John Lucas, Joey Graham, and Ivan McFarlane. That team made it to the Final Four, narrowly losing to Georgia Tech by 2 points. Luke Schenscher was insane in that game, had the game of his life. A double-double. 19 points, 12 rebounds. Jarrett Jack, former net, 10 points. Marvin Lewis, 15 points. No, not the former Bengals coach. Will Bynum off the bench for Georgia Tech, dropped 11. Sutton retired in 2006 with 798 wins. He wanted to get to 800. In the 07-08 season, the San Francisco Dons came calling. Jesse Evans got off to a 4-8 start. Was good for Louisiana, wasn't good for San Francisco. They made the change, and they went with Sutton. They said to him, you can get your 2 more wins here. Sutton went 6-13 and ended up finishing his career with 804 wins. There is no question that Eddie Sutton is one of the best coaches in college basketball history. I stand by the fact that he shouldn't be in the Basketball Hall of Fame, but it's nice that he got that honor before he died. He is incredibly deserving of being in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. May he rest in peace. Tomorrow, you're probably going to get the trifecta. I don't see anything major happening in the next 24 hours in the sports world. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that you don't think experience means anything until you have it.